Kei ngā kanohi kai mātārai o te motu, tahuri mai o mata, kia mātaihia ngā taipū pānuku-nuku, ngā tāhuahua pāneke o te ao tōranga pū. Welcome to Mata with me, Mihi Ngārangi Forbes, brought to you by Te Māngai Pāho and Irirangi Te Motu, New Zealand on air. From Whānau Ora to foreign policy and even frozen school lunches. It's been a fractious few weeks in politics, and today we'll be unpacking all of it with the help of two political popo. Kua tau mai ko ngā ika āwhiro o te whariparimata, ko Nanaia Mahuta, rawa ko tau Henare, tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora.
Kei te pēhea kōrua.
Ka pai, ka pai, ka pai.
Ka nui te ora.
Kei te aha koe i nei rā?
I tēnei wā, kei te koinga, kei te tiaki tamariki, kei te whariwānanga o Waikato, ko te mea nunui, kei te ora, taku ora i tēnei wā puta i te paremata.
Nā koe, what about you, Tau? What are you up to at the moment?
I'm standing again for the Haukura, Independent Māori Statutory Board.
Ka pai.
I spend every living open-eyed moment with my moko, my 10-month-old moko, and he is the handsomest little Ngāpuhi baby, but he's also muopoko, so.
Right.
Yep.
Little bit.
Little bit.
And you're both into your gardens, I see on your socials.
Yep.
Gardens, preserving, doing the things that, can transmit those things that you've been passed down from your grandmothers usually and mothers, and looking after tamariki is just so awesome at the moment.
Tēnā kōrua. Well, the government's investment summit was held last week. At the hui, Waikato Tainui told investors that iwi investors were the only constant in this nation. Tūko Roirangi Morgan told the summit, which represents about $16 trillion in wealth, that they didn't need to go to the Crown, that they could come straight to iwi for deals. Is investing in infrastructure a good move for Māori?
Well, it depends what kind of infrastructure and where, but there are opportunities if you look at renewable energy, if you look at the potential of cutting into the long pipeline of investment required for waters infrastructure in specific areas where it can unleash other growth opportunities. Yes, of course. But again, each iwi will be making their determination, not so much on infrastructure alone, but what that will unleash in terms of further growth potential within their rohe or in partnership with other iwi in other rohe.
Tau, the message that we heard from those iwi leaders is that notwithstanding the environment, anything's on the table. What's the possibilities?
Oh, they are huge. I think the world is your oyster if you've got the wherewithal, if you've got the money, and if you've got the Crown is a constant as well. Tuku's right in terms of where iwi are. They will be here forever. The Crown also, in its various hues, will be here as well, and I think there's a need for iwi and the Crown to come closer together to work on stuff that is that will benefit the whole nation. So that's anything from roads, from waterways, from you name it, they'll be into it because it's about a return on investment, and the investment is in our people. So,
it is about a return on investment, but it's also about safeguarding the public interest. So if you think about public iwi partnerships, iwi can hold the space of the public interest to ensure that our investment in our own infrastructure in Aotearoa is not exporting the value of that investment to other international companies. So that's where the real opportunity is for a different conversation.
I heard them talking about hospitals, and it made me think about Huiamotu at the beginning of last year, and that moia of Te Puia to build a hospital in the Waikato. Is that the kind of stuff that could be happening?
Well, if you go back to the context and the time, Te Puia's response was in relation to the 1918 epidemic and the travesty that occurred with many Māori communities as a result of a health system that didn't fit the needs of people at the time, Māori communities at the time. So I think, yes, while a hospital remains a real opportunity, actually the investment has to be in primary health care to ensure that we don't get to such a high level of need where we end up in tertiary services. So I think a decentralised system of creating a health network that better suits the needs of Māori, especially Māori in rural areas, especially where our demographics are, our very young and our very old. There is a different way of doing things, and a hospital is a part of a broader pipeline of investment decisions to get better health outcomes.
If we look at how, there was a little bit of uncertainty at the beginning of Waikato Tainui when they first set out on their settlement, so we can learn from that. But at the end of the day, I guess iwi corporates are just like capitalists, and they have to return investment to their shareholders.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of settlements, but they're not the be all and end all. And we've got to get out of this view that they're going to save us. They are going to produce what is missing, and I think that I worry that with every settlement, especially under this lot, it takes away the Crown's responsibility in education and health and infrastructure and all of those sorts of things. No iwi can deliver on what is missing. That's actually a Crown responsibility, and so you turn to Ngāpuhi, and we haven't got a settlement. I don't think we'll have a settlement in the next 5 minutes, in the next 10 minutes. It will take some time, but that's not going to solve all of our problems. Our problems, some of them are within. I look at Tamaki. 47% of the Māori that live in Tamaki are Ngāpuhi. What about those people? What about all of Māori that live in Tamaki? So let's not get carried away at the settlement thing being the be all and of our lives. It's not, never will be.
Well, the real value of talking about the Māori economy is to ensure that we're reshaping the paradigm against which Māori are making more proactive decisions to grow its own ecosystem of enterprise, to be able to continue to focus on collective opportunities as a result of economic growth and opportunity, and the redistributive benefit of growing our whānau, growing our whānau communities, which are often marae, or our hapu, to be able to engage more in enterprise that benefits them at a local level. I think I agree with Tau to the extent that all the solutions won't sit within PSGEs or Māori trusts and incorporations, but they can be enablers and activators of more whānau in small business, so that, we know the evidence is clear. When you get Māori whānau in business, they're going to employ locally. They're going to more than often be able to build security through home ownership. They're going to be able to build security through equity in the business that they own. That's going to be a model that their own whānau will look at and say, well, if Kazi can do it, I can do it too. That's what we want for the future.
But for the last 3 decades, we've had this criticism from Māori themselves, saying, at the doorstep of hopu are our people who are really struggling, who can't put kai on the table. It's a really important discussion, the whole post-settlement hikoi or journey. I guess now that we've become, iwi have become more sophisticated in understanding what settlement means, the opportunity, the potential, the right of refusals, all those kinds of things, the partnerships. What would you like to see the future be in terms of being able to not take on the responsibility of education and social services, but to maybe put a korowai over the top of it?
Oh, I don't know where that question is taking us, but what I can say is that it's not a binary choice anymore, economic development without social advancement. You have to bring these things together. So we've almost got to decolonise our way in which we're thinking about the economy and Māori participation in it to ensure that we've got a more holistic set of objectives. For example, in commercial PSGEs, while the remit is to grow the revenue for the iwi in order to redistribute, you can do that in ways that address other opportunities, which may have in the old days be seen as social, but the social advancement to contribute to economic growth go hand in hand. So I do think, and this is coming from smaller iwi, I do think smaller iwi are thinking more courageously and in an innovative way to bring these things together. Big iwi like mine have a 30-year track record of learning, and that should not be lost because there have been bumpy parts along the way that have shown us you need a strong governance structure. You need now to bring together your commercial and your social imperatives. You need redistributive models to be able to build capacity at home so you don't get those stark differences between those who are benefiting from settlement and those who haven't been or never have been.
Or who never will.
I was just picking up on what you were talking about, the Ngāpuhi settlement, and it's not in the next 5 minutes or the next 10 minutes, but while the Crown, I guess, wades through the mandate issues and other things, is the Ngāpuhi Investment Fund helping or is more needed?
Oh, look, I think it was a great idea to park some money into an organisation that their sole aim before settlement was to grow the purse. That's a great idea. It comes later when a distribution method or even philosophy comes about. What I really loved about the Tainui settlement and has done is how they targeted each marae, and they said, okay, well, this is what we're going to be able to do in terms of allocate funds for the marae, because I still think maraes are the centre of the universe for Māori communities, regardless whether we're in a city or not. And their push to make sure that each organisation, each marae was fully up and running, health and safety, blah 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 blah. That affords a sort of uplift of individual whānau, wider whānau, small whānau, big whānau. My hope, in the big scheme of things for Māori in general, is actually more small to medium-sized enterprises for Māori. You know, I look at my kids, and man, they're knocking it in their own little ways, and that contributes to the big Māori pie. So if we can do that's just one small thing.
Tēnā koe. Let's move to...
Can I just comment on the Sovereign Fund, though? It is a unique and bespoke opportunity to address the historical claims within Ngāpuhi. But the real question is what could be done in the interim, prior to settlement, to create the optimum model for Ngāpuhi that once settlement is achieved, you're not kind of waiting 5 years to figure that out. You're doing it now. So I think that's a challenge. The opportunity for Ngāpuhi as a result of the Sovereign Fund is they will be able to diversify early. There are very few Crown lands up the north, except maybe conservation lands and a few reserves and things like that.
They can give that back?
Well, of course. But the opportunity to diversify early will position Ngāpuhi in a very strong way to be potential investment partners in a broader and diverse portfolio of opportunities, I'll put it like that. So that's the real opportunity there. And if the ecosystem moves along the trajectory that Tau is suggesting, which is let's get our whānau into their own businesses, then if that question is asked up north, all sorts of things can happen. So that's a real opportunity. All you need is connectivity, and renewable energy, and there's huge potential up in the north.
Tēnā koe. Let's talk about Whānau Ora. What do you make, Nanaia, of all of the decisions of to change all of the whānau commissioning agencies all at the same time?
Well, I think what we've learned from Whānau Ora is that the capacity to commission local outcomes through a Whānau Ora concept is a model that works for Māori. That's the first thing. Second thing, of the previous ecosystem of Whānau Ora commissioning agencies, the absolute core going forward must be data and evidence, because you can make better investment decisions if you know the group that you're serving and the information that will help inform where to direct resources. In this next set of arrangements...
Are you saying there was room for improvement there? Or is there's
always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. I'm talking to the strengths. The strengths of the previous model was the ability to commission locally for whānau outcomes and in ways that made sense of an existing network of providers who only continue to, I think, improve what they were trying to do on behalf of whānau. And then the second learning is data and evidence platforms to make better investments. Those things should carry forward into the next phase. And in the next phase, the real question is how, with the added advantage of perhaps, let's say, iwi in there, what would they add that wasn't present in the previous model? I would just hope that there's enough relationship to be able to bring the successes of what was forward, even though the politics has changed down in Wellington, into community models that will continue to benefit whānau. But if this is about providers building their own egos up and things like that, then our whānau will miss out again, and they can't afford to.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think in my mind there's anything other than a dumbing down of Whānau Ora by this government. And it's the way they went about the change. Normally, I would have expected a complete review of, like Nanaia said, data, historic. What about the successes? Where have the failures been? So none of that has been done by Māori and by the Crown, by the government. And now it's about it's an undermining of the kaupapa of Whānau Ora by virtue of saying, well, we gave you this money last time, in the last 10 years. This time we're going to cut it back, but you're still going to have to produce what the last 10 years has done. And I think that's an insidious way of saying to the rest of the country, see, it's not working. And I think that they will use it as a reasoning to cut back on the services. Forever and a day, Māori have been asked to do things at less than what the going rate is. That's whether you stay out of marae, it goes throughout every aspect of life, and this is just another attack. So, on the one hand, I think it is a bit of subterfuge by this government. On the other hand, I think it was the right time to actually do a deep dive into the successes and failures of the system.
Can I ask you that question, Anna? Because Whānau Ora's been going for 10 years. A review was meant to happen 5 years ago, but then COVID got on the way. Is it reasonable that after 10 years that there's a change and a move towards mana whenua?
Well, I don't subscribe to change for change's sake. If it was evidence that there could be further improvements that would help outcomes for whānau, absolutely. So agree with the point that Toa's made, but you can't help but feel a little bit cynical about this government's motives, and that's what will cause the greater level of frustration. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Te aka whai ora was wiped out. Whānau Ora contracts changed. No real robust process that evidenced either decision. So, you can see this potentially in a very cynical way of saying, actually, this is the government's solution to cutting funding into Māori health.
We've had Winston Peters in the US, we've had Chris Luxon overseas talking trade deals and security. What do you make of what you're hearing?
Oh, I actually think it was a good idea to get across to India and see if we couldn't stitch up some sort of deal, going forward. Those sorts of things are always hard. If you're a member of Parliament, if you're a member of the government, your job across the water is to sell New Zealand the best possible way you can. If that's playing cricket on the street with some locals, then so be it. So I'm all fully behind whatever moves, as long as they don't sell New Zealand too short. And in terms of Winston, where Winston is, I think it's the same sort of thing. Don't bad mouth your nation. However, there are lots and lots of things going on in the world today that weren't happening even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's fraught with uncertainties. Just look at what's happening in Gaza. I hate what's happening in Gaza. And I look around the world and I see and to look at the countries that are standing up for the Palestinians in Gaza. They are under the cosh, and it leads me to believe that both Israel and America are wanting all of the Palestinians to leave, either forcefully or on their own, so that they can have a nice little golf course on the Mediterranean.
It's pretty unstable times in geopolitics, and it's all about relationships, really. Are we nurturing the right relationships?
Oh, we have to nurture relationships where they all exist, which is everywhere.
Yep.
It's how we do that. And so as a small country, New Zealand has to maintain its independent foreign policy stance in a way that when there is stress in the geopolitical dynamic, strategically we need to assert what it is that we stand for, because we cannot control the big superpowers. It's not a coincidence that Winston is in the US and the Prime Minister is in India. India is the largest, one of the largest growing economies within Global South. It is a counterbalance to China to some extent. It has good relationships with the Middle East and South Africa. So having that type of relationship with India does matter. We're not going to get a free trade from either the US or India. So from a trading perspective, the opportunity really is to register that we are there, we are connected to our region. There are opportunities in India, very bespoke ones, agriculture, tech-enhanced opportunities. And with the US, I think it really is a matter of trying to understand the outlook, the foreign policy outlook of the current president within this dynamic with Ukraine, also with what's happening in Gaza, but also what's happening in relationship to how the tariffs and the trade sanctions that Trump are imposing, how that might shift some of the economic global supply chains.
Tau, is there a danger that the ramping up or the rhetoric around defence spending and the rest of it means more Māori boots on the ground as not peacekeepers but combatants?
Oh, I hope not. You know, I think there's always room for peacekeeping duties around the world, and we've shown throughout our history that we're a country to rely on in terms of peacekeeping duties. It worries me that in terms of our closeness, you know, through, let's say, wanting to be part of AUKUS, where are we heading in terms of where the geopolitical is at the moment? I mean, I look at Ukraine, and you got to feel sorry for the Ukrainians. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for what I'm about to say, but there goes my career again. I find the world a bunch of hypocrites when they say they're behind Ukraine, but they're not behind what's happening in Gaza. I just find it utterly despicable that a country as strong militarily as Israel can, and I understand their issue. You know, October 7th wasn't just a little skirmish. It was horrific. It was their 9/11. But to destroy a nation, a burgeoning nation, my angst about Israel is not only to Israel, it's to the other Arab nations as well, who have stood back and watched what has happened and not got in and tried to work, you know. My heart bleeds for the Palestinians, and I'm not saying it doesn't bleed for Ukraine, but you can't have one to support one and not support the other.
And to that point, if we were consistent in our foreign policy, our independent foreign policy stance, we can play a peacekeeping role in Ukraine, and we can be more, I think, give more voice to a two-state solution in Palestine. Yes. Because that's the long-term solution. It's not going to address any of the harm that's been caused to people. But if we're looking at it in terms of a role that we could play, we would be more proactive in trying to be a part of the community that says the only way through this is a two-state solution. Israel is fighting that.
Winston Peters would argue that that's what he's been saying the whole time.
That's what he's been saying, but then we look to the votes, we look to the proactive steps that you can take to be able to guarantee that. We would recognise the Palestinian ambassador as a clear statement that this is New Zealand's stance, and that was the policy when I left my role.
If you go to the museum, on the outside wall, on the western side of the museum, is the word Palestine. Our people fought in Palestine. Palestine existed, and it still exists.
I need to jump onto this last kaupapa, and we're nearly out of time, but I wanted to touch on it because people care about it. It's about the frozen cheese scrolls, the exploding plastic dinners. I mean, the Prime Minister's overseas at the moment, but he's going to have to come back to this school lunch debacle. How does he resolve it?
By having a look at what he got rid of. And boy, I tell you, it was a success. Even I didn't think it was going to be a success, but it was, because you had small communities getting together and working it out for themselves. Business opportunities sprung up. Māori that had been unemployed were now employed and actually
but
doing really well. But that would mean
that the coalition would have to say that this isn't working.
Well, what's wrong with that? Actually, some people would vote for a community, a political party who actually stood up and said, we screwed up, this is what we're going to do now to fix it.
What do you think will happen? Can Christopher Luxon step in and solve this? We've got, the ACT Party's, as an ACT Party policy, David Seymour's about to become the Deputy Prime Minister. Can Luxon step in, solve it without our tamariki bearing the cost of the deal making?
Unlikely to. I mean, follow the money. David Seymour has promoted a national contract to provide food. It has failed. But why are they still holding on to it? That's the question mark that needs to be answered. Secondly, absolutely right. Under the previous school lunches scheme, you had local procurement and local provision of kai to kids, and in ways that I don't think we had the same types of stories. So, they're getting rid of an ecosystem that was there ready to be able to continue to that mahi, but they don't want it. Why? Too successful. Goes back to the previous point, you can't help but be cynical about this government not basing their decisions on good information, but rather ideology. Yep. So the tail is wagging the head. Actors had far too much to say, and I think that Prime Minister Luxon needs to really stare down some of the ridiculous decisions that are being led by ACT.
But he won't. He's
sadly
weak.
Not. A tōna wā ka kitea. Kua pau te wā ki a tātou, tēnā rau atu kōrua i te whakarongo koutou ki ana Nanaia, rawa ko tau Henare. Kua tau ngā ko tingi kōrero mō tēnei wā, tēnei te whakaute ki te Māngai Pāho, me irirangi te motu nā rawa tēnei hōtaka i taunaki. We'll be back with more mata in a fortnight. Nohoro mai.
Ko te reo, te take.